Welcome back. The other leaders of Babylon wanted Daniel out. They knew that the only charge they would be able to find against him would be something that would be related to his devotion to Yahweh. So they connived, and they got Darius assigned a decree that no one would be able to petition anyone, God or man, other than Darius himself, for 30 days. If anybody violated that decree, they then would be thrown into the den of lions. We're told in verse 10 of chapter 6 of Daniel, "Now when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went home, and in his upper room, with his windows open toward Jerusalem, he knelt down on his knees 3 times that day, and prayed and gave thanks before his God, as was his custom since early days." I'd like to consider Daniel's response to the decree. We know that he prayed, but consider the great detail that we're given in verse 10. I believe that we are specifically given the details that were given in order for us to learn from. First, as in the teachings of Jesus, you can refer back to the beginning of the series, Daniel had a specific private place that he went to pray. He went home and into the upper room. So, this is now the 76th of these encouragements. Have you found a spot to pray? Have you located that place that you can go to spend some time daily with Yahweh? Secondly, he opened his windows toward Jerusalem. Now, we don't need to pray toward Jerusalem. That was an Old Testament custom to pray toward the temple. However, there are 2 quick points to consider. First of all, Daniel made sure that he was focused upon Yahweh in his prayer. He looked toward Jerusalem. We ought to make sure that we are focused toward Yahweh in our prayers and not toward ourselves. Secondly, he could have kept his windows closed. He could have just faced toward Jerusalem. But it was his custom to open the windows and to face toward Jerusalem. And so in the midst of this trial, in the midst of this attack upon his spirituality, upon his relationship with Yahweh, he continued to do that which was his custom. He opened up his window. He didn't shirk from fear of those who might see him. In a sense, he was making a stand in civil disobedience. Daniel only defied the king when the king issued a decree commanding him, that is Daniel, not to do something that God had commanded him to do. Daniel had served Darius faithfully, and that's why Daniel was being considered to becoming the ruler over the entire kingdom. That's why the other governors and satraps were opposed to him. But in this situation, as we talked yesterday, both the governors and satraps and Darius knew that Daniel would be faithful. Daniel would be true to his relationship with Yahweh. And so Daniel went home and he opened up his windows and he prayed. Similarly, Peter and John were commanded by the Sanhedrin not to teach in Jesus' name. Peter and John's response? It's recorded in Acts 5, verse 29. But Peter and the other apostles answered and said, "We ought to obey God rather than men." Finally, note that Daniel prayed 3 times daily. We find it hard to pray even 1 time daily. But Daniel's habit was that he would go home, open up the windows in the upper room, and pray toward Jerusalem 3 times every day. The Word says that he got on his knees 3 times, and he gave thanks, as was his custom. He got on his knees to pray as well. Position is important. Getting on our knees shows reverence and submission to the King of the universe. And then note, he gave thanks. In the midst of the trial, knowing that he was being set up, he gave thanks. He gave thanks to the God of the universe. At this point in his life, Daniel is probably in his late 80s or early 90s. He went to Babylon as a teenager, and then the 70 years of Jeremiah's vision had passed by. So by this point, let's say he was 16 years old, add 70, he's 86 years old. He's somewhere between 86 and 91 years old. He'd been praying like this for a long time. May I be able to have that habit instilled in my life, such that when I'm in my late 80s and early 90s, someone could say to me about me that this has been his habit from early on. May it become your habit as well. Take time to pray. Make time to pray. And have a blessed day.